Right. Aloha, everyone. Good afternoon. Nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us. My name is Thomas Dalbert. I'm Executive Director of Friends of Kauai Wildlife Refuges, and you're here. Thank you for being here for our Princeville Moʻolelo free monthly talk story series. So this is our opportunity just to come together as a community and explore all kinds of different conversations about conservation and culture and community. And I think we're going to get a lot of that all bundled together in a really special one today. So this first, though, is just a quick plug for the organization that I get to show up for every day and help represent, and that is the Friends of Kauai Wildlife Refuges. We are the nonprofit dedicated friends group that helps support our island's 3 national wildlife refuges. As a small island, we're just so honored to have 3 places federally set aside and protected for native species, including Hanalei, Huleia, and Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuges. And these represent 2 important kind of species groups of our native wildlife, including the wetland birds at Hanalei and Huleia. And as you've heard me say, if you've been showing up for our series on previous months, this is the year where we are really bringing some attention in particular to a couple of the birds that don't get nearly as much conversation perhaps as some of the seabirds. But this is not a number that we're happy with. So we have some work to do, and that starts with awareness. So thank you for being here. Thank you for learning and becoming educated so that we can help make sure that the Aleula and the Kaloa numbers go back in the right direction. The good news is we know what they need. They need spaces that are managed and free of predators. And these are things that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does all day long, but they need additional resources to be able to do that. And we as a friends group are basically the conduit for the generosity of the community to help plug into those federal spaces and to help give them the resources they need to do their job well. So that's what we get to do, but I can only do that thanks to the love, generosity, and interest of all of you. So mahalo community for standing behind this mission, and please continue to be aware of some of the information that's going around. This is the year of the Aleula as well that we're lifting up across multiple partners. And we're going to do what we can to, like I said, preserve more spaces. So not only are the protected spaces safe, but hopefully even beyond that, that we get to see more and more of them just out in the waterways. You know, that's their natural habitat. Any freshwater system, whether it's a stream or a pond, you're likely to see an aleula, and that is a beautiful thing. Many people have seen them in their backyard, and we want more of that. And largely that means keeping your cats indoors. That's probably the biggest thing that any of us can do. We're just having more discussions around that every day about shifting the community's relationship with feral and free roaming cats. So thank you for being part of that change. So, all right, down off my soapbox for a little bit. But anyway, yes, that's our wetland bird populations. And of course, many of you know us for our relationship out at Kilauea Point National Wildlife Refuge, because that one is open to the public, and that's where we're helping to protect seabird populations. What we basically do as a friends group is we raise funding, we provide in-kind staffing support, and we do community outreach, connecting people out in the community and educating them on the refuge. And again, awareness leads to advocacy and change. And so that's where it all starts. So a few of the pillar programs that we're really proud of as a friends group that we get to do thanks to your support. One of them that I'm really is closest to my heart is that we help fund the care and recovery for all of the sick and injured birds transferred from one of our 3 national wildlife refuges and into the care of our great partners, Save Our Shearwaters. And this year, we're providing that care at a cost of $50,000 thanks to the support of our community. Every year, that need has increased, and we've been able to just move right along and meet that need and say yes to that and make sure that those birds get the care they need. Thanks goodness to Save Our Shearwaters that does such an amazing job for our island. Like I said, we get out in the community, educating young people through our keiki game and adults in conversation, and just raising awareness about the wildlife that we're here to support. And one part of that is also providing free buses for field trips out to Kilauea Point for those amazing inspirational experiences for young people coming out. And on the other end of the education scale is our scholarship program. And this year, the board just allocated a new high water mark $31,250 is an odd number, but it's a high number. It's a great number. Just look at the little chicken skin moment, some of the future of conservation right here. These are young people from Hawaii studying in conservation-based careers, and we are so honored to play a role in their evolution and their education so that that can come back and have just an immeasurable impact upon our islands. In addition to that, and probably the main thing that we do is just say yes all day long to the needs when Fish and Wildlife comes to us and says, we have a tractor that needs built or some supplies that need purchasing or some project or program that isn't fully funded through the federal government. They come to us and to our board and make requests, and we are able to then help fill in the funding to help make sure those programs are sustained. And a couple of those unique ones this year that we're really happy to celebrate as well is you've probably been following that our great historic treasure, our 113-year-old lighthouse, just received the second largest facelift of its history. And the Friends Group was able to jump in at the end of that and deliver an additional $65,000 to help make sure that the work got completed at a safe level, and she got a nice, great, beautiful coat of paint. So come out and check out the lighthouse. These were just some pictures of the work that just happened, but this is a fairly recent shot, and if anyone knows this historic beauty, she hasn't looked this beautiful since its centennial, the last time there was a big facelift. Anyway, we're really proud to help sustain that historic treasure, and that we were in a position to be able to say yes and help get that work done. In addition, come out and visit us at Kilauea Point because we have just unveiled the most magnificent piece of community art in partnership with the Garden Island Arts Council and the extraordinary artist, Kat Ho. We now have an 80-foot-long mosaic mural that tells the story of the evolution of these Hawaiian islands from the very first and oldest Kapuna Islands, up at Kure Atoll, all the way out to, this is the other end of it, with the next seamount that is emerging out beyond the Big Island. So it's actually, and thanks to local amazing photographer Hop Osterlin over here, this is one of her shots, just it gets you a chance to see the immense scale. This is an 80-foot-long mural, plus some really amazing signage on the sides that really sets the stage for this story. And as well, we're really proud to say it's the largest representation of Olelo, Hawaii on the refuge and bringing culture and a sense of place into this protected space. And it's a really nice evolution and partnership. And over here is a kind of a snapshot or a blow up showing you this one is Kauai and Ni'i House. So just get a sense of just all these amazing materials. It's beyond expectation. This project's been going on for so long, and now for it to have been delivered and to be so jaw-droppingly beautiful and so extraordinary. And as well, the way that the partnership evolved to help really deliver the Mo'olelo behind this. And it's just, anyway, there's so many levels to it that is even richer than just the delivery of this beautiful mosaic. So, but anyway, come out, see us at Kilauea Point and enjoy it for yourself. Just as a reminder, Kilauea Point is open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 to 4, and you get to witness that on your way out to the lighthouse. So really proud to have played a role in that as well. And with that, if you're not already a follower or a friend and just are interested in what we're doing, please visit us out at Kilauea Point and shop our nature store, volunteer your time, donate, or just follow our work on social media or on our email list. If there's anyone in the room here today that's not receiving our emails, there's a sign-up sheet in the back, and we would welcome having you sign up and staying a part of our community. So thank you. That's my plug. I will, excuse me, before I choke to death here, get out of the way so that we can bring up here an incredible local guy with a story to tell and some images that are just out of this world. And I don't think I could do you justice, so I'm going to allow you to do a brief introduction for yourself. But we are really honored to have Mike Coots with us today. Mike, aloha.
Should I do a test for the audio? I think is it, yeah.
You're good.
Awesome. You guys
Thank
mind
you,
if I
folks.
sit down? Can you guys all? Awesome. Mike Coots, and thank you guys for all being here. And I'm excited to share my story, but more importantly, the story of sharks. I was born and raised here on Kauai, and from an early age, fell in love with the ocean. I would have caught my first wave about 5 years old. My grandmother Rose pushed me in on my boogie board at Waipu Beach. I remember how good that moment felt. And even at that age, I was like, I want to spend as much time as I can in the ocean, and got really into it in my early teens, spearfishing and diving with my friend Dell, and we would spend the summers out here offshore at Palikekua, trying to spear parrotfish, or basically whatever we could get for dinner that night. And I remember it was midsummer, and there was about 4 of us that would go, and we'd just pretty much spend all day diving. And I was the worst of the group, and because of that, my friends had me hold whatever they speared. And we had a milk jug that was hooked to a line, and it would be off floating, and then we would put the fish that we got, hook it to the milk jug, and they would keep diving and I'd drag it along. And it was like midday, and I was holding a parrotfish on this milk jug with the rope, and I felt a little tug, and I looked over my shoulder, and it was a reef shark eating the parrotfish, and I'd never seen a shark before, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was one of those moments you know there's going to be a time in your life where you see a shark. I remember being a little bit scared. I would say a little bit more curious, and definitely it was like that rite of passage as a kid. I called my parents, got back to my friend Dell's house. This was back when we didn't have cell phones, and called my mom. I was like, I saw a shark, and like the excitement, and it was just one of those childhood moments that really sticks out with me. And it was a little bit later, shortly after my 18th birthday, I had a lot different experience with a shark. I had joined a bodyboarding team called Fly Classic, and there was about 10 of us or so on the team, and it was a group of a good mixture of bodyboarders and surfers that were turning professional. Our coach Bob Sato would take us wherever the best waves were on the island, and he would film, and we would come back and watch the footage and help us with sponsorships. We would make these like sponsor videos, and started entering contests and stuff. And it was late October in 1997. I was in that transition of trying to turn professional, and everything was pointing us to surf this spot called Majors Bay on the west side. It's on the military facility, and this was before 9/11. You could drive on the sand. It's now closed. And we would wake up before the sun would rise and get down to the beach early. And we pulled up, and he had this old Scout. And I remember we driving on the sand, and we could just see these perfect waves. And that's past summer. It had been basically dead flat on the South Shore. And this was the first winter swell of the season. And like the excitement in the car, we were like, oh my gosh, we're finally going to get to surf some good waves after months of just absolute junk waves. And we pulled up right up to the surf spot. And I distinctly remember it as the doors opened, this waft of a really bad, disgusting fish smell filled the car. And probably should have taken that as a sign to maybe slow down and analyze what was going on. And but the waves were going off, and there wasn't anything stopping us. And we just got our boards, got everything ready, and jumped in the water. And the sun was rising. It was maybe 4 foot, like double overhead, a little under double overhead. And the surf spot is a reef break that it's a long stretch of sand, and then it hits the reef, and that's where Majors Bay is. And we're in about 30 feet of water, so 100 yards offshore. And we all jumped in the water and could still smell that really disgusting fish smell, almost like if you had a cooler full of fish and the ice melted and it was sitting in the sun for 4 days, and you open the cooler and smelt that. Like I've never smelt anything like that since, and anything prior. And got out to the lineup. My friends right away got some really good rides. And I remember this beautiful set. I had been in the water for maybe 10 minutes at the most. And in surfing and bodyboarding, you don't want to share waves with anybody. It's kind of a selfish thing. And there was a guy next to me that had wanted the wave as well. And like the selfish side of my head is thinking, okay, if I paddle first, and that's kind of the unwritten rule in surfing is whoever starts paddling first or is the deepest, it's their wave. And I just remember like the selfish thought, I want this wave. And I had been sitting on my board waiting while my friends had prior caught waves. And as soon as my fingertips brushed the surface of the water to paddle to catch that wave, a large tiger shark came up from right underneath me. I didn't see a fin break the surface. There was no Jaws music cueing. Sharks are ambush predators. They're really good at what they do. And it came from right up underneath me and grabbed onto both my legs. And I felt no pain whatsoever. I just felt a huge amount of pressure, like you four ladies were sitting on my legs. And it was very obvious I was getting it. Yeah.
I've often thought of the correlation. Yeah.
Yeah. No. But it was just, I just felt this pressure on my, and it was like, I'm getting attacked. I knew my friends weren't playing a joke on me. I knew it wasn't a turtle that bumped into me. It was very visual. And I do remember the nose of the shark being very square, and that's a telltale sign of a tiger shark. And I felt that pressure just get tighter and tighter. And the first thing I did, completely out of instinct, was I put my right hand into the mouth of the shark. And that didn't work. And it lifted me out of the water and started ragdolling me back and forth, left and right, completely out of the water. And I just remember swaying, like kind of like looking at the surface below me, and then it sat back down. And that pressure started getting tighter again, and I knew it was biting me again. And the only thing I could think of was to punch it. Not something you read in Outside Magazine or Men's Journal or what to do when getting attacked. It was just one of those total fight or flight moments. And I gave it 2 to 3, I think, really good punches in the nose. Immediately, it was like all you 4 ladies just got off my legs. I felt that pressure release. Got back on my board, and the first thing I did was I looked at my hand that I had put in the shark's mouth, and my index finger was completely covered in blood. I could see a little bit of bone. It was actually like split open like a potato, and I'd never been like even remotely close to that injured before in my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm hurt. And then I looked at that guy that I'd selfishly wanted to take his wave from, and he was as pale as a ghost. Like he was completely white. His eyes were bugging out of his head, and the only words that came to me was "Shark, go in." And he just looked at me and didn't say a word and took off to the beach. And I got back on my board, and I started paddling behind him. And when you're paddling, you're in a prone position. You don't see what's behind you. And my right leg started doing this like spasm, this shake, like this uncontrollable shake. And thought in my head, well, that's got to be the shark finishing me off. And I looked over my right shoulder, expecting to see a big set of jaws attacking me, and it wasn't that. The shark had perfectly severed my leg right off, like if you took a samurai sword and just whacked it right off. And there was big squirts of blood every time my heart beat, by from me to you. And right then my heart dropped, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. And there was definitely a little bit of moment of panic. And fortunately, a little wave came, and I caught it and rode it right up to the sand. And it sort of, the way the sand bar was that day, it went into like this berm, and it shot me up the berm. And the first thing I did was try standing up, and you're used to your whole life with 2 legs, and I didn't have a leg, and I fell down, and I rolled back down this sand berm embankment. My teammates fortunately saw what was happening, and they all caught waves, and they rode it right up to me. My friend Kyle grabbed me, dragged me a little bit further up the beach, took my leash from my board, and made a tourniquet. His quick thinking saved my life. I wouldn't be here talking to you guys if it wasn't for his fast action. And I remember kind of that panic really went into a calm, and I thought I was going to die, and it wasn't scary at all. It's kind of hard to explain, but it was a really peaceful feeling. He said a prayer for me. I closed my eyes, and as soon as he finished the prayer, I opened my eyes, and there was a pickup truck right there. And a guy, Keith Karasik, happened to be in the car park at the time, checking the waves, and saw the commotion, and then saw me hopping up or trying to hop on one leg. And then he saw the blood, and he put his car in 4-wheel drive and came right up to us. And fortunately, I mean, he was like that to me. They threw me in the back of the truck, and everything was happening so fast, and nobody thought to like jump in the back of the truck with me. And he just took off to the ER, and I lay in the bed of a pickup truck as we started going to the emergency room. And there was, I think, 3 or 4 surfboards that were next to me, and a cloth-like board bag. And I really didn't want to look at my injuries, so I would just keep focus on playing with this cloth. And I started getting really hot, really cold over and over. My body was going into shock. And 1 second, I'm ripping off my wetsuit and trying to wrap it around me because I was so cold. And another second, I'm ripping it off because I'm so hot. And I made the mistake of, like, you know how you can kind of tell the severity of your injury by the reaction of others? This was probably about 7:15 in the morning. It was time, school time. And we were just passing cars. And we had passed a mother and daughter on the way to school. And I remember looking into their eyes, and there would have been blood going, off the tailgate. And I'm just laying there, and they saw, guts and a lot of gross stuff. But their expression, I was just like, oh my God, and it's like back to playing with the board bag, And we pulled right up to the emergency room. This was KVMH Hospital. And Keith did have a cell phone, one of those old-fashioned brick cell phones, and had called in, so they knew we were coming. And he backed right up to the ER door, and I remember the ER doors opening up, and the doctor running out and coming right up next to me, and then he put his arm on my shoulder, and I passed out. I must have been holding on for medical attention, and I woke up in this groggy-like state at KVMH, explaining to the doctors and nurses that I had been attacked by a tiger shark. And I remember there was a ceiling light, and it was really square and wide, and I was trying to say the nose was this big. And my friend Jeff Hubbard had given me these really cool board shorts I was wearing that day. And I remember the doctors with the medical scissors cutting into my shorts and just being all bummed that my good board shorts were getting destroyed. And then I passed out, and I woke up in an even groggier state in an ambulance, and I was being transferred to Wilcox. And my dad's a medic, and it was one of his work buddies, and he was doing just some funny shark jokes, I think, to keep the mood light. And I just remember kind of laughing, and joke probably wasn't funny. It was just probably a lot of morphine. Passed out again, and I woke up a good 24 hours later, or nearly 24 hours later. And I remember my eyes flickering open, going from complete darkness and this kind of almost like a movie scene where your eyeballs and eyelids just open up, and the doctor's right here, and my mom's right here, and they're right in my face. And it was a very serious moment. And my mom's looking at the doctor, and the doctor's like, "You want to tell her, Carla?" That's my mom. And my mom was like in a very somber, serious tone. "Mike, got something to tell you. You were attacked by a shark, and you lost your leg." And I remember just processing it and being like, and then the only thing that came up was, I was there. I know. And then they chuckled, and then it became like this, that energy in the room lifted, and it was a real, he's happy that, he's okay with it. And I just felt grateful to be alive, to be honest. I didn't think I was going to open my eyes, and I felt just very, very grateful to survive that. And I spent about a week or so at Wilcox, and there was a lot of people in the community that came and visited and said hi. And about the third day, a guy came by and was there for maybe 10 minutes. I didn't know him, and he was wearing pants. And after he left, my mother was, Mike, he's an amputee, and he's got a prosthetic leg. And I had never seen an amputee in my life living on this island. I just didn't even know there was such a thing as a prosthetic leg. And it was a bit of a shifting point, I think, because, and not to say anything about being in a wheelchair, but I thought I was going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life, and knowing that there's a device that would help me get back to the beach and get a sense of normalcy again. I just remember being stoked. Okay, that's rad. I spent about a month after that bedridden, and I had a bunch of cuts on this foot and stuff with stitches and staples and everything. And once the doctors gave the A-OK and the staples were removed and the risk of infection was gone, they said that you can get back in the water. And it was a little over a month after the attack. I think it was like about 5 weeks that went back to the beach. And I went with my friends, and they wanted to surf a spot really close to Majors Bay. And it wasn't getting back on the horse. It wasn't going to the same. It was just happened that's where the waves were good that day. And the west side has really soft sand. I'm sure you guys know. And you step in it and it sinks down to half your, above your ankle. And I was using crutches. I didn't have a prosthetic at the time. And that morning we got to the beach, and I was just so awkward learning how to use crutches. And one crutch after the other, almost falling over. And I had a boogie board, and I think I didn't have any using any fins because I stole. My foot was pretty mangled up, and using these crutches and getting to the water's edge and getting on my knees, putting the crutches aside, and then one knee after the next, kind of just doing this really slow, awkward crawl into the ocean. And that first wave lapping up against me and feeling just the water kind of coming over my body. And it was probably one of the most incredible, beautiful feelings of my life. And I felt at that moment like everything's going to be okay. After the attack, I was having a young life crisis of what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. My idea of being a professional bodyboarder was out the window, and I had gotten a job at Newcombe Surf Shop. And the very first day, I had been fitted for a new prosthetic, and This was months after, and at the shop standing all day, and I got a really bad blister and had to go to Wilcox when the shift ended, and they had to cut open and lance it open, and it was gross and everything. And I'm just like thinking, you know, Kauai, most of the jobs you're standing up. You're doing ballet, you're working in a restaurant, and I had fallen in love with photography, and I'm thinking maybe it'd be a fun career to be a photographer. My parents were very encouraging, and I had fallen in love with photography because my coach had some really good gear, and this was the time when Andy Irons was rising to becoming world champion, and a lot of my friends were turning professional, and I would snap photos of them, and the magazines and sort of the smaller magazines would pick up my work, and it wasn't so much like I was a good photographer, it was just my friends were really talented at surfing, and I fell in love with it. And my parents were like, why don't you go to photography school? And I applied to a school called Brooks Institute in Santa Barbara, California, got accepted, and felt like the next day I was packing up and moving to Santa Barbara. And I spent 4 years studying photography, and about the second year, you need to declare your major. And my friend Sparky, his wife Lila, was a Roxy model, and he kept talking about her lifestyle of traveling the world, going to these beautiful islands in the Maldives or French Polynesia, and the photographers make good money, and they're hanging out with beautiful women and going to the most beautiful places on earth. And I'm like, I want to do that. So I made my major studying to learn how to shoot people, fashion, portraiture, and spent the second half of those 4 years really learning how to shoot people. And after school ended, I got a phone call on my cell phone from a number, like a random number. And I usually don't pick up strangers' numbers, and something told me to answer it, and picked it up. And on the other end of the phone was a lady named Debbie. She's like, you don't know me. I'm a shark attack survivor myself from Florida, and we're putting together a group of other people that have been attacked to champion for shark conservation. And these were words I had never heard of. I knew a heck of a lot what sharks were doing to people like myself, and I had no idea what we were doing to sharks. And like, I know nothing about shark conservation. She's like, don't worry. You have a second on YouTube is a documentary called Shark Water by Rob Stewart. And that night I watched Shark Water, and it talked about the importance of sharks for a healthy planet. It talked about shark finning, what we were doing to sharks. And about halfway through that film, there was a number that came on the screen, and it was 80 million. And that's the amount of sharks that were killed for shark fins a year. I had no idea there was that many sharks on planet Earth. I was just absolutely blown away by Rob's filmmaking, and then his storytelling, and sharks. I called Debbie the next day. I'm like, Debbie, wow, I had no idea that I can use any bit of my story for betterment of the ocean. Absolutely. And Debbie was like, well, would you want to come to Washington, D.C. and speak to Congress? We have a bill that's closing a lot of loopholes on shark finning, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. And a week later, I was in the halls of Congress speaking to senators and using my story and the irony of wanting to protect sharks. And we got that bill passed. It was the Shark Conservation Act of 2009. And shortly after that, thank you. There was a bill in Hawaii that made the possession of shark fins completely illegal. Went to Oahu and similarly used the irony of being a shark attack survivor wanting to protect sharks, and that bill got passed as well. And shortly after that, I met a lady named Ocean Ramsey, and she invited me to go to a place called Guadalupe Island in Mexico. And it's an island that's about 180 miles offshore of Ensenada, Baja California. And there's an incredible amount of sea lions and seals. And because of that, there's great whites. And I had no idea about diving with sharks. I had no idea about really photographing sharks, anything at all like that. And I really didn't know what to expect on that trip. And I had brought an old GoPro, or a GoPro that was older. It was the second version where there's not a screen on the back. At the time, I was working for Quicksilver as a staff photographer, and I had really good camera gear, underwater housing, and I just didn't think to bring it. I just really didn't know what to expect on that trip. And we left the port of Ensenada, and you're on a liveaboard boat. It was my first time ever being on a liveaboard where you spend the night on the boat. And I remember leaving the harbor, and the chefs brought us out dinner and started eating. And as soon as we got to the channel, and as soon as dinner happened, it got really rough, and the plate started sliding back and forth, and it was like we can't even finish dinner, and everybody started taking seasick pills. And basically we all went to sleep for the next 20 hours for that crossing and I've never since then been on a boat that rough in my life. And I remember kind of waking up in this groggy state and hearing the anchor drop, and wasn't familiar with really boat stuff at the time, but I knew that must mean we're here, and got out of bed and everybody else is still sleeping, and grabbed a fast coffee and I walked to the back of the boat, and the crew was putting a shark cage in the water, and I didn't even know we were going in the water. I just really didn't know what this trip was about. I just knew to come along. And the crew was like, "Do you want to jump in?" I was like, "Sure." And so they give me a regulator, and you put a little bit of weight on you so you can kind of sink down, and you go in the shark cage. Was in the cage for maybe a minute or so, and it's Guadalupe has incredible visibility, so much so that you don't have any depth perception. You really don't know if something's 2 feet in front of you or 50 feet. It's just blue. And I sit in the cage, and I've got my little GoPro. I'm just and I look to my left, and then I look to my right. Nothing, just blue. And I look to my left again, and there was a massive great white just staring at me. Oh, and I pop up, and I'm screaming. I'm like, "There's a gray white down here!" And the crew just looks at me like in confusion, like, "That's why you're here." So I get back down, and everybody else starts waking up, grabbing their coffees, getting in the water. And the rest of the day, I took that GoPro, and I would take a picture here, take a picture there. And that evening, I took the memory card from that GoPro. I put it to my card reader, put it into my laptop, and saw my very first shark photos. And like, wow, this is incredible. This is much cooler than shooting any girl in any bikini on any tropical island. And since then, I've made it my life mission to really tell authentic stories of sharks. And I think sharks are the greatest muse a photographer could ever want. I see them as absolutely beautiful. They're difficult to photograph, challenging. Some species you've got to go to the ends of the world to see. But more importantly, I think the narrative, or I know the narrative of sharks in our life has been skewed. Hollywood has done an incredibly good job of demonizing them. Shark Week has done an incredibly good job of demonizing them. And we've grown up, unfortunately, that sentiment is starting to change with generations, but the only good shark is a dead shark. We need sharks for a healthy planet. And I did a film for Olukai a few years back, and I really believe that I'm, in some way, a publicist for sharks. They've got a bad PR problem, and they need an authentic voice, showing and sharing that they are beautiful, incredibly wonderful, much needed animals for a healthy planet. Sharks are an apex predator. They're a keystone species. They get rid of the sick, the dying, the diseased, and the weak. And any scientist, any marine biologist worth their weight will tell you that we need a healthy shark population. And I take those skills that I learned shooting people and studying at Brooks, apply to sharks. And you spend time with sharks underwater, and 95% of the time, they're not ripping something apart. Their eyes aren't rolled back, jaws protruding, and they're just shredding and tearing like you see on TV, like you see in viral online videos. They're just swimming beautifully below the waterline, being sharks. And I really love telling those stories and take those skills. It's a bit unorthodox, I guess, the style of photography that I do. If you were to do a Google search, underwater photography, 9 out of 10 images is taken with a fisheye lens. But you wouldn't shoot a person with a fisheye lens. You wouldn't come right up to them with a wide angle and get right in their face. And people do that with underwater photography. And I take portrait lenses, longer focal lengths. And with sharks, you can kind of cheat this a little bit with being a little further away from your subject with longer focal lengths, because the water where we're diving is clear, and we do that for safety. I mean, if you're at great whites or in a cage and safety, it's a little different. But if you're with tiger sharks and oceanic white tips, you want to have really good visibility. The first thing you want to do is show eye contact, and you'll notice that when you do that, and it's because that element of surprise is removed. They know that that they're there. They slow down, and you're able to get much better shots. But because of that clear water, you can use portrait lenses. And then when I'm editing photos, I try to look for a smirk, a smile, just some way that, you know, maybe you can see a little bit of yourself in that animal. And I truly believe that if you can learn to love something, it makes you want to learn more about it, and ultimately want to protect that. And that's really the goal of my work and the goal of my photography. It's been a absolutely wonderful, incredible ride. Since that day, about 2.5 years ago, I came out with a book called Shark Portraits. And the style of photography in there is exactly like this. It's trying to show sharks in a beautiful way. And it's, I think as a wildlife photographer, and especially as a shark photographer, you need to tell authentic stories. And that book is really just a testament to the beauty of sharks. And 9 out of 10 images in that book, they're not looking scary. And I think hopefully a few of those pages in that book, it makes you want to laugh. And that's an emotion that you would think the last thing from sharks. If you were to ask me that morning, you know, whether I would get in the water knowing the rest of my life I'm walking around with titanium and carbon fiber for every step, and being able to have such wonderful experiences in the ocean around the world with incredible people, and to be able to share stories with you guys like I am now, absolutely. I feel like the luckiest amputee in the world. So thank you guys. If you guys have any questions. Great question. How I talked about eye contact, that to me has been the biggest one, because you can really see their behavior shift. And I spent a lot of time, and I've talked to my auntie Burl, like we had Sharktober this year, when there was almost every day, like people calling me like incidents with sharks. And when you're on the surface of the water and you don't have that eye contact, it's completely different than being underwater with sharks. And you don't ever want to have like a tinted mask, have your mask foggy. You want them to see your eyes and know, and they just literally, like, you can see their energy and their demeanor change like that as soon as, and that's probably been the biggest, I would say, that the biggest thing I've seen.
What do you think they're sensing? They're another sentient being.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's a yeah, I do. And you think they're, you know, hundreds of millions of years of evolution of learning, I'm going to surprise my prey. And you remove that surprise, they maybe don't look at you as much as prey.
I have a question
Yeah.
too. About your photography, you mentioned the portraiture lens.
Yep.
Is that like a 50 millimeter?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my book, I would say 90% of there's a little over 200 images. Over 90% of that is with the 50 millimeter. I shoot with the 51.2.
Okay.
And majority, the sweet spot for sharpness on that particular lens, I would say, is about f8, 7.1 to f8. So I tend to shoot around there, and the shutter speed maybe 750th, 500 to 750. If I'm on the surface and stuff's happening a lot faster, I would do a faster shutter speed. But underwater, about that. And in clear water, my ISO would be maybe 400, 640, right. 400 to 640, and less visibility, or real cloudy and overcast, maybe up to 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But as a follow-up to that, real quick, you'd mentioned how the photographs, what you're looking for is, you know, maybe a smirk or something that tells personality or story about the individual.
Yep.
So with that in mind, that when you're selecting the photographs for like your book, are you doing much cropping?
That's a great question as well. If there's something really interesting in the image, I will crop into that to really try to tell that story. If there's something that doesn't belong there, crop out. But then also it gets back to telling authentic stories. And if you crop something out, maybe you're not telling the whole story. And that's just kind of a dilemma between editorial, and that's been the, you know, for eons of journalism. And yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yep.
Have you ever been threatened by a shark again?
Yeah, I have. Not necessarily. So there's an island, or it's not well, there is an island in the Bahamas called Grand Bahama, but off the island, it's about a 2-hour boat ride. There's a place called Tiger Beach, and it's not actually a beach, it's a sandbar. And the guy that named it Jim Abernathy, called it a beach so nobody would find it. But it's basically just in the middle of the ocean. It gets shallower. You're about 30 feet of water. And I was with the guys at Scuba Certify You. They're called Patty, and they were doing a film on me. And it was like the third day of filming, and I had a safety team around me. We're photographing tiger sharks, and they have PVC pipe. So I have like 3 guys with PVC pipe, and we sit on the seafloor because tiger sharks, when they do attack, they like to come up. So by sitting on the seafloor, you sort of remove that. I was sitting there, and the producer of the film, I had brought on that trip different prosthetics, and I have a running blade. It's very visual that it's a prosthetic, and they wanted me to wear that in the water just because they thought it would look better. And I have you can't see under here, but there's a foot shell. And also with shark diving, you want to kind of cover up. Like if you have a wetsuit and your hands, you have black that comes to here, this looks like an octopus, or the incident light rays will hit this. And if you're doing something can come up, and so you'll wear gloves. My foot shell looks the same with the wetsuit as well. It looks like skin, it looks like a foot, so I took the foot shell off. Without the foot shell, there's 2 metal bolts that connect to the carbon fiber, and there's these big stainless steel bolts. And I was photographing a tiger shark, and there was maybe 3 tiger sharks in the area at the time. And I was photographing the shark, and I felt like this. And I looked, and there was another tiger shark biting my prosthetic, my running blade. The sharks, a lot of the sharks there have names, and this shark was called Buttface because his nose had a dimple. And I had been there the year prior, and I had photographed Buttface. And I have a fine art, like a big printer, a large format printer, and I had made a big canvas print of Buttface, and it was in my room. And so for the year prior, I'd wake up and I'd look at Buttface, and then a year later, he's biting my leg. Yeah, and then no, I didn't know. And I because I had the film crew was like so on it with everything. I think they did film that moment. But the footage never came to the light of day because it was not the story. Like they don't want to promote. And then I had a few years later, back at Guadalupe Island, I had the good fortune of, it was developed for Shark Week, and it's called the Spock. And it's basically like a shark cage, but it's cylinder shaped. And you put on scuba gear, and there's 4 underwater scooters that are hooked up to all connected to a battery, and then there's a guy in the back of this Spock thing, like a driver, we call him a pilot, and then I'm in the front, and you get to hang out the front, so half your body is like hanging out, and to get in it, you've got to swim outside the shark cage, and the great whites are like checking you out, and then you go into the Spock thing, you descend down, and then you just go cruise like that, but you get incredible tracking shots, and it's like once in a lifetime opportunity to get these type of shots where you're like going around. And so I had this great white started playing chicken with us, and it would come right at me in the last second, turn like that. And I was using the 50 millimeter, and I was filming, and it came, I think it was like the 3rd pass, and it was winning chicken. And it didn't turn away. And I was looking through my viewfinder, and all of a sudden I couldn't get focus anymore because it was too close to me. Then I put the camera, like I just dropped it like that, and it came right up, and its jaws were like that, and it just went, and I could feel that wave. And I had more adrenaline. I couldn't talk for like a day. I had so much adrenaline. It was wild, and then we ended. That was the last time that Spock's ever been used. And I think it was not as much it was like hungry and wanted to eat me. It was the noise of those scooters it was irritated with. And a lot of like in California, the sea urchin divers use those scooters, and they have issues with great whites because that frequency it gives, they don't like that. And it could also be because it maybe thought we were in competition with sea lions, something else moving around that, and it was like this because there was other sharks there that maybe it was trying to show the other sharks, I'm boss, I'll take care of this. It's trying to,
Yep. First question is, what is the advice you would tell someone who is expressing fear of being in the ocean about being in the ocean?
I think, well, obviously fear is healthy, but having respect for the ocean, and sharks aren't puppies, and they're wild animals that, can do things to people. That being said, statistically, your chances of getting attacked are very slim, and you can look at somewhere like Waikiki where people, there's how many thousands every day in the water, and I think a lot of the general population thinks as soon as you get to the beach and you put your pinky toe or your big toe in the ocean, that a shark's going to come out and rip you apart. And that's the furthest from the truth. And I mean, there was a thing on CNN today about all the sightings of great whites in Southern California right now, and they're calling it a plague and whatever the words you want to use to create this fear. But there hasn't been any, and knock on wood, but the amount of sightings, like, we are really not their choice of food at all. It's just, wrong place, wrong time. Good question. Yes.
What software do you use to
I use Lightroom.
Lightroom,
yeah.
Yeah. And the lady over here talked about getting close to a shark. You think there's energy transfer, because we all have our own energy at all levels. So
yeah, I think the best underwater photographers are the ones that are comfortable being underwater and maybe better at diving than they are photography. You don't want to be fiddling with your gear. You just want to be calm, relaxed. And I've also noticed a couple things. One is, and you can go on trips and you're with 10 other photographers and you see the people that are always chasing animals, they're never going to get a good shot. You always see a tail and those, whether it's a shark, or a different type of fish, they're gone. I find my best images are, you almost like ignore the animal and they get curious and they come right up to you. A lot of good spear fishermen, they do the same thing. You see dinner and you chase after it. You start playing with the sand and not looking at it. They get curious and then they shoot the fish. Kind of the same thing with photography. And then secondly, I'm a big believer that luck favors the prepared. As soon as, let's say you're on a liveaboard, and as soon as that anchor drops, to have batteries charged, backup batteries charged, camera in hand, it's really, luck favors the prepared. I've found that. And then also a lot of times, like, before, if I have a shoot the next day, and even if it's not shark, something else, I try to visualize what I want to create and the emotions I want to try to invoke when somebody looks at that image. And in my head, I kind of create a scene with the light, or tomorrow's going to be cloudy, and what lens and kind of almost like what'd be the word? You're pre-visualizing the image before it happens, and it's trippy because it really works.
got my best underwater video because of a guy who was chasing things. Everybody that was on that trip, like, this idiot.
Yeah.
So my buddy and I, subsequent dives, we went out. This got in long before everybody else, and he got out in front of me and kind of went around a corner and was pointing real frantically. So I was getting my camera ready, and this big spotted eagle rage.
Oh wow! Yeah.
We would not have seen that with that other guy.
Yeah. I mean, animal, not just pick up on your energy for sure.
Do you have a feel for the intelligence of the animal?
Absolutely. And that was one of the first things I noticed in that very first trip at great whites. Always, you think you see a film of a great white, the eyes are black, there's no life. I noticed that first trip, the sun would hit the eyeball, and a great white shark's eyes blue, and you can see it analyzing and see it processing, and you see intelligence. And I watched this documentary on Wyland, and he talked about when he does his paintings, his murals, 90% of the time, some high number of when he's working on his art, he spends on the eye, because that's where the life is.
Where is your favorite place that you have gone in the world to see the sharks, and what kind of sharks did you see there?
Well, 2 months ago, I was in New Zealand, and I try to go there this time or like March every year. And I like 3 weeks or a month or so, and there's great whites there. I go to the very bottom of the South Island. It's really cold. It's a place called Stewart Island. It's at the very, very bottom of the South Island. There's a lot of seals there, and it's wild. It's rugged. The sharks have their own personalities. A lot of the sharks are named, and the crew that I go with, they're good friends, and they love their sharks so much, and just learn so much from them and their excitement about, who are we going to see today? And I would say New Zealand for sure. It's my favorite place on earth, and it's with great whites. And there's just I mean, I love oceanic white tips, reef sharks, white, so many different species that are awesome, but there's just something about a great white. And it's not because your stuff goes viral or whatever. It's just, there's no other animal like it on Earth. It's literally a living dinosaur. They look as prehistoric as can be, and they're wild. There's a smaller shark there, named after one of the crew's grandmother, and she swims so slow. And they joke around that if she swam any slower, she would sink. Her name's Goa. But when she shows up, the girls get all excited, and she just like it's not what you think a great white would be doing, and just going 1 mile an hour at top speed. But they all have their own personalities, and it's really cool. Like the more time you spend there, you pick up on these personalities because you see the same shark year after year, and they'll come back with battle scars, and you just wonder, the rest of the year, what were they doing and where have they been? And a lot of them, they'll go to Australia, big, travel thousands of miles, and then during that time, they all come back Stewart Island. It's pretty cool.
Mike, do you have a sense of the health of the population of sharks that are in our waters here?
Well, it depends what species you're talking about. I know a lot of like the bottom fishermen, they talk about there's more sharks right now. I know some of the fisheries are wanting to remove protections of sharks because they're predating on a lot of the fishermen's catch. Oceanic white tips. The science says that 80% of oceanics in the state of Hawaii have been decimated since the 80s because of the longline industry as bycatch. You go to places in Florida, they say there's more sharks, but they're also catching more fish. I think globally the trend is the shark populations are getting decimated. And when I watched shark water, it was because of shark finning, and I think that's changing now, and it's really becoming a big part of the bycatch for the really big industrialized commercial fishing operations, especially in places like Asia. That aren't fishing in Asia necessarily, but their fleets are going to other parts of the world, doing these very large-scale fishing practices and completely wiping out fish stocks. And sharks are a big part of that.
Wait, just a moment.
What's the typical shark lifespan?
Great question. Some of the species nobody knows. It's pretty wild to think like a great white. Nobody's ever seen one give birth on planet Earth in 2026 when everybody's got a phone. Nobody's ever seen one mate. We really don't know how old they live to. And there's, and the science is getting there where they can do really good guesstimates. Some species that you can have in captivity, they do know things like that. If you were to Google how old does a tiger shark live, you're not going to really get a definitive answer. They think maybe 50 years, 60 years. But it's still, I kind of think that's cool. We haven't seen, and that's the holy grail of underwater photography, is to be able to capture a great white giving birth or mating. But there's a big part of me that hopes next Shark Week, I don't see that. The Shark Week of the following year, I don't see that. And that stays, mysterious for my lifetime. Pretty cool. No, I have not. This last trip, I saw a great white like this big. That was really cool. And I have a friend in California that filmed a drone shot of a great white they think that was about a week old. It was the youngest ever filmed alive, because they do get the pups in like nets and they'll pull them out and be able to, and they're literally just micro great whites. But this one didn't even have the counter shading yet. And he filmed it with his drone. Pretty cool. Yeah.
Hi, Mike. You may already answered this question just now, but what do we know about the reproduction and do the males? Yes. Do they fight each other? The males fight each other?
They do. Yeah.
So is that where they get scars from?
I don't know how many pups they have. It's live birth. It's funny. I don't know a huge amount of shark facts. I go and do talks, at schools, and the kids know 5 times as much as me, and they're asking me questions. I'm like, how do you? I have no answer. I don't. Gotta Google it. I really, there's part of me that wishes I studied marine biology instead of photography. Yeah.
Follow-up question or comment. So very cool about the New Zealand comments. So the question is, do New Zealanders have a spiritual relationship with the sharks there like they do with the whales as well?
Good question. And I couldn't give you a definitive answer. Yeah. There's nothing that's really any moments that have stuck out like it's like an amaku in Hawaii, but I'm sure there's some parallels for sure. Don't quote me on that.
We might just quote you on butt face.
Do you do mainly photos or photo and video? Or?
I do like up until maybe 2 years ago, almost all photography. Social media, unfortunately, the algorithm, but it's just, it is what it is, tends to be video to get stuff shared. And I like photography better. I think like for myself, I'd like to be able to tell all this complete story. And once you look at something, and then having audio and narration, or I don't know, cuts, but I guess you can tell it better. Maybe I don't know, it's got its own, but I enjoy photography. And there is a balance of, and it goes back to like that ethics of shark photography. You get a viral, let's say I get a viral clip, or a clip that I know will go viral, sharks going crazy, very Shark Week-esque. Put that on social media, 1 million people see it in a day. But then what are you really doing for the shark? Like, you're just perpetuating that. But then again, if your social media account, you get a bunch of new people that will see it, follow you, and then you can have a platform to tell the real story. So there's a balance between viral, all that stuff, and beauty, and and why we need sharks and what's happening to sharks. So there is always this sort of finesse between the two.
So Mike, you're running for county council. And I'm going to vote for you. I would like to know, when you win and are sitting at the county council and have the opportunity to do something based on what your experience has been, what would you accomplish?
From like wildlife, ocean,
Conservation, sharks, ocean, anything you can think of that you...
I'm still learning exactly the levers of the county council, and a lot of the fish policies are state and federal. I don't think the council in the past has ever done much in the way of fishing regulations, in the way of conservation initiatives. A lot of that is state and federal. So I don't really have an answer for that. And I think my biggest, the focus I want to really work on is housing. Is housing.
Yeah.
Is trying to make locals be able to afford homes and stay on Kauai.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the vote.
Just a moment.
Mike, this is a simple question. The last one was difficult. Do we know how well a shark sees? We hear these, he only bit the scuba diver because he thought he was a seal.
Yep.
So do we know, do they see things clearly?
As well. Over 400 different species of sharks. You've got the Greenland shark they basically blind. And I think it parasites over its eyes. Sharks do have rods and cones like humans. They don't see in color like we do. They see different shades. That's a great question. And with gray whites or tiger sharks, I really don't. But their visibility, I mean, their other senses are incredible. Their eyesight is, I don't know the distance exactly, and I don't think really anybody does with, let's say, great white or tiger shark. Animals that you can put in captivity and do tests and things like that, obviously. But every shark would be different for sure. Yeah, and with their senses, the furthest would be frequency. Second is smell, and the third is eyesight. And then when you get really close, they can sense, like if you're nervous and things like that. They've got receptors. Happy Live learned Zini on them. Yeah.
So Mike, talking about the senses, I'm not sure whether you actually said what that terrible smell was that day you went out. And was it something on your surfboard, or did you ever find out what it was?
Don't quote me on this. About 10 years ago, there was a story in the Garden Island newspaper at Majors Bay where I got attacked, and it was from some surfers that smelled, and the way they described it smelled just like that morning. And there's a shrimp farm, or there is a shrimp farm, and I think, my guess is that it was discharged shrimp waste that gets flushed out of. There's a ditch right there, Kini ditch, and that I was and I did kind of some research and stuff, trying to think, okay. And initially I thought maybe it was the shrimp farm, and I'm like, okay, but the shrimp farm far away from where and then when Google Earth came out, I traced the ditch system and then sure enough, it connected to, and it was Sunkist Shrimp at the time was the first owners, but then they weren't in operation yet. So I was like, I couldn't have been the shrimp farm. When that article came out, I did some more Google stuff because this was prior that I kind of had this idea in my head. But when I saw that article, I did it. And then I came across an environmental impact statement that they had to get before they got the permits to operate. And it was a 3-month EIS. And they were testing the discharge of the shrimp waste. And they made a flow chart of where that discharge was going to go. And I was right in the middle of that and right in the very middle of that EIS. So I think they might have been doing some testing, but then also it was the first swell of the year. And I had heard shortly after that they opened up the ditch because of the swell for some reason. And there was tilapia that had gone out to sea and were killed with the salt water. And I was just basically there was a bunch of dead tilapia. But if, do I have any like bad ill or anything? No, it's like, yeah. I would just hope it not, wouldn't happen to somebody else. Yeah.
You're clearly a positive person, and you've made your life what it is by being positive and looking forward. And you were back in the water, a month after the attack at majors or near majors. Have you ever had any why me moments? And if you have, how did you push through them?
Yeah, no why me's. I won't it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had issues with my prosthetic early on. A lot of sores, a lot of broken parts. A lot of frustration, and it wasn't until Obamacare that I was able to get health insurance because I'm a contractor and I wasn't able to get a pre-existing condition. So I would buy used feet liners off eBay from other people because it was the only thing I could get. And I've been ripped, had a liner that was broken, and I would super glue it, but then the super glue, when it dries, it cuts into your skin. The guy would be selling one, and then it'd become a scam, but I'd go to the post office every day, excited for my used liner, and it would never come. And yeah, I had I had a really bad limp for a while. Didn't have the best fitting prosthetics. Fortunate now, I'm partnered with a company out of Iceland called Osur. They're the leaders in prosthetics worldwide, and they take really good care of me, and I've got the best legs possible. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The biggest is by far carbon fiber. It holds energy, it releases energy. It's a game changer for amputees. It's carbon fiber. Yeah. And I'm fortunate I have my knee. If I didn't have my knee, that's another joint that you got to replicate. And up until very recently, all that was electronic and you couldn't take it in the water. And I surf a lot. I have a specialized surfing prosthetic. It'd be a lot tougher if the shark had bitten my knee off. I've got a running blade. I run, do beach runs and stuff. I've got a quiver for different things. Yeah.
What's the best way to buy your book in order to support you?
I would say the best way to buy my book, it would be go to Hunter Gatherer in Kilauea. It is for sale on Amazon, but it's Amazon. Hunter Gatherer has it. I think Ohanole has it. I think maybe the surf shop in Hanalei as well has it. And Aloha Exchange has it as well. I think, yeah.
And you have a website as well?
I do have a website, sharksbymikecoots.com. I do fine art prints. I did pick up some today and sign them. And a lot of people in Europe really love sharks. I do an edition of 75 and write a little handwritten note and mail them across the world. And then cootsforcouncil.com if you want to see it.
Yes, just one question. What advice would you give someone who's interested in photography or wildlife photography, or even as a hobby or as maybe a profession? How do you get into stuff like that?
I would say spend money more on experiences, going to beautiful places that have people that know the animals, that ethically are doing things correctly, than maybe spending it on gear. You don't need fancy stuff at all. So my best, with phone, your phone is nowadays so good. I would, use your money to try to get to whatever animal you really want to photograph, find the right people in that niche and put your money there, and not as much gear. And then also learn about that animal and do your best to tell true stories. It's easy to shift narratives and try to in your head think this is what most people are going to want to see, but is that really the truth, or are like the sharks just really repeating the Jaws and the Steven Spielberg story that has been going on for how long?
Is there any shark repellent that works?
That's a really good question as well.
That's my question.
I mean, there's shark bans, there's different things. I personally don't think they really work. It's all new, like new emerging technologies, and there's shark bans, but there was a lady, a swimmer that got attacked by a great white a few months ago in California. I think it was between like Southern and Central California, and they identified her. She was found a few days later, and she had a shark band on when she got attacked. Maybe for other species, a deterrent works like that, but it's kind of like when I've seen gray whites like from down deep, when they see their eye on a prey and they want that prey and they start going and accelerating full speed. There's nothing that I don't think they're not going to turn like they just. For different species, maybe like tigers are much more slower and kind of almost like not goofy in a way they attack, but it's slower. Great whites, I think by nature, they come out of the water and they hit things hard and fast. And I don't think that deterrent would necessarily maybe in time. There is a thing and I think it's there's no downside, is people have been putting underneath their surfboard either stickers or spray painting, basically just lines to break up that silhouette so that it looks like smaller fish instead of one big mammal from underneath. So when you do see that, it's broken up. It's just basically like a dark, light, dark pattern, safety stripes, that's what they call it. And there's no downside of paint, putting that in your board, and they do stickers and you get spray painted or take felt markers and things like that.
Any other questions?
Are you up for doing online things like this, say with the dive shop from Austin?
Yeah.
Which is I'm part of the group that's trying to get more activity through the dive shop, and I've been wanting to have some online things like this.
Send me a message and
okay, I'll get with you.
Oh yeah, I'll get.
Should people change the narrative to shark bite rather than shark attack?
I've seen that, and I'm indifferent. I'm indifferent. Yeah. I mean, there are obviously sharks are attack, and it's violent and it's in clear water, and there's all, but 9 out of 10, I really do think it's mistaken identity and just wrong place at the wrong time. But there are those incidents where you're like, that didn't make sense. And I've heard a biologist kind of almost describe it like for serial killers, or let's say, mass murderers, and sometimes there's a DNA, a genetic in their brain that's tweaked a little bit, that maybe that's the same with other animals, where you have a dog that's, just aggressive. And there's that one individual dog that's different than the other dogs, same species, but it's just different and behaves different. And that can be the same with sharks as well. Thanks, you guys.
Any other questions? Yeah, thank you.
Guys.
Thank you all for doing it.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah.
One quick last comment from the chat room. Mahalo for all you do to support the sharks. Your story is incredibly inspiring, and we are so grateful for the awareness you share with the world.
Oh, thanks, chat room. Thank you.